Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the first winner of the Space Micro Grant competition that we had. We're going to talk about some new events that are coming up really soon. And tonight, we're also going to talk a lot about new space. We're going to talk about what the heck happened to Boeing, and what we're going to do about that. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. It's the private sector finally catching up and maybe surpassing the more legacy space sector. And my guest tonight will be Rick Tomlinson. This should be an interesting conversation. So from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, I'm Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. So I got a couple of things to talk about today. We're going to do some business. Before I introduce my guest tonight and we get into that conversation, probably you're wondering why you should be watching this. The Center for Space Commerce and Finance has been around since 2015, and we do things like the New Space Business Plan Competition and the Space Investment Summit series, in which on these programs we've done over 20 new space VPC events. We have awarded over $400,000 in sponsored awards to many, about 20 some odd different space companies from around the world now. And we've exposed to the world and introduced to the world probably about 80 companies in total, and many of which are doing very, very well now because they went through our program. So what are we doing now? Our latest initiative is our space micro grants. We found this interesting niche that has proven to be very, very successful our first time out. We are giving away no strings, $1,000 grants for raw startup companies, most of them that are just getting out. They need to have little things done. They want to rebuild their website. They want to get some office supplies. They want to do something else, or in some cases, just take a week off from work to finish the business plan. So we had a contest this August, and now it's reset now. We're going to be doing it every month. But our first winner, we had 16 entries in this current cycle, and they were all really, really good companies. I was amazed by the quality of what was coming in over the transom on this. And so, but one company stood out above the others, and that company is, and I've already informed them, is Torre Space and Power Systems out of Little Rock, Arkansas. And here's what they're doing. They're developing a new form of electric power generation for spacecraft that harnesses the natural occurring high velocity ionized plasma emitted by the sun as a technology based on well-known concepts of magnetohydrodynamics. And so they've done some research and testing of this concept. And we thought they just wanted the $1,000 to beef up their website. So we thought these guys were really, really interesting, and they have a great potential going forward. And actually, on our next podcast, the founder, Chris Torrey, will be with us, and he'll be able to talk about that technology in great detail. And I can't wait to have him on to do that for you. One other thing is kind of interesting from our perspective. As you may know, the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, the things that we do, essentially we stand at the crossroads of space commerce and venture finance. And it's what we do. And so we're always looking for new opportunities to help promote and be champions of space commerce and startup companies. Our motto here is that we're helping build the new space solar system economy for the future, one successful startup at a time. Now, an interesting aside is that NASA just, given everything that's going on, we're going to talk about it later, NASA just offered a symposium that you can sign up for, and we have a link for that. It's called a Symposium on the Macroeconomics of Space. Now, this is headed by their Office of Technology Policy and Strategy, and this event will delve into the economic impacts of public R&D spending on space investments. It will feature academic presentations, a panel discussion, and a keynote speech from someone from the Council of Economic Advisors. Now, and supposedly this symposium promises to offer new insights to the macroeconomic effects of NASA's work. And so I've signed up for this. This should be a lot of fun because I don't know what to say about, if I have anything to say that's contrary to what their narrative is, because I don't know yet what their narrative is going to be. But it's worth a shot to go there and find out and perhaps make some comments. If not there on site, then certainly later on my LinkedIn page or someplace else. But I wanted to let you know about that. If you want to sign on and look at that thing, it could be, given what's happened lately, it would be very entertaining. So on that basis, I want to introduce tonight's guest. We're going to talk about this and a lot of other things, but my guest tonight is Rick Tomlinson. He's essentially has been for 40 years or more both a space rebel, but also a respected leader. And he's listed as one of the top 100 influential people in the space field. And he's referred to, and I certainly think he is, one of the world's top space visionaries. He helped coin the term new space and worked to create the new commercial industry highlighted by Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. He's a leading writer, speaker. He's been a congressional witness. He led the commercial takeover of the Russian Mir space station and signed the first private astronaut to fly to ISS. He's a co-founder of the Space Frontier Foundation, the Earthlight Institute, Space Fund, and the New Worlds Institute. And he's also a founding board member of the Original X Prize. So he's a revolutionary, he's a respected leader, and he's a really good friend. Welcome, Rick. Thank you for coming.
Tom, nice to see you, man.
Okay. Before we get into this, I've heard a lot about how you inspire a whole lot of people out there in the world now. You've just been doing amazing things for a long, long time. How'd you get there? Who inspired you?
Oh, my goodness. Well, as an asthmatic kid growing up, I created my heroes by, in a sense, reading science fiction. Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov. They gave me what I call permission to dream, which is a concept I talk about in many places, but it's the idea that you can only give yourself permission to dream, and nobody can take it away from you. It's yours. And they gave me a dream. I was inspired by my dad, my grandfather. They're with the Texas heritage. My mom, little English lady who was just a little powerhouse, and they were both service people. My dad, we call him Sarge, was in the military forever, and then my mom helped found Meals on Wheels of East Texas, worked with the elderly, and all of that. So come from sort of a service family. Mm-hmm. But then again, it's one of these things where the inspiration I get is largely from the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis at any point in time in my life. And, I was amazingly luckily enough to get to work for Jerry O'Neill, who wrote The High Frontier, which is required reading for anybody in our field. The Bible of our field, in a sense.
I have a dog-eared copy on my...
There you go. There's a couple of them back here behind me somewhere. Yeah. But the thing about Jerry was, look, I was just an upstart. I started the L5 Society of New York City on the Intrepid aircraft carrier back in the 80s, and ended up volunteering for Dr. O'Neill, who was in Princeton with the Space Science Institute, which is not the same as the organization today, very different organization back then. And I remember talking to Dr. O'Neill and saying, look, I'll do anything. I'll sweep the floors, whatever, I'll take it all, whatever. And he was very kind, and his partner, Freeman Dyson, and they listened to this crazy kid who was me. And, You know, I originally, quick story, back in college, I had um, been largely self-taught. I was a terrible student. I was one of the students that got in fights with all my teachers, walked out of the room, all that kind of stuff, you know. Always thought I was smarter than them, you know, whatever. So I had terrible grades. And then one weekend, I found myself stoned out of my mind, sitting in the student union, and there was a guy named Timothy Leary talking about Dr. O'Neill's book. First time I'd ever heard about it. And talking about building what they used to call colonies, what we would call communities now in space. That inspired me, but I didn't know what to do about it because, again, I was having such a good time. Worked my way into the theater department, largely because that's where the girls were, and got a tech job. I found myself working backstage, miking up the speaker that night, who was a guy named Gene Roddenberry. I asked Mr. Roddenberry how I could do this. I asked him how I could do the High Frontier. He knew about it. How I could make Star Trek happen, because I was a terrible student. And won't tell you the full story, but basically he said, look, you know what I did before I got Star Trek? I said, no. And he said, I used to drive a black and white. I was in the LAPD. And I used to drive around LA with my scripts on the seat next to me. And he said, I just had to never give up. I kept going and going and going until I finally made it. He said, if I can do that, you can do it. And it fired me up and I went for it. So it's those kinds of things that, to your listeners, I would say this, you know, just always be open for the input, wherever it's coming from. You know, I've gotten advice from homeless people or ladies checking me out at a grocery store. I don't, you know, some of the best advice in the world. You never know where it's coming from.
That's true.
Many times people who are held up as the bastions of wisdom have far less wisdom than the person you're standing next to in line.
That's something that happens to me a lot. I'm aware of that. And it's like when I go out and I do my stuff in life, I never know who I'm going to run into who's going to have something interesting to say. And I like to think, you know, the great bird of the galaxy or whatever, sent that person my way for a reason.
Yeah.
I always think that. And so I take to heart what's happening out there.
Yeah, the message, you know, the universe is often sending you a message. It's just a matter of whether you're on receive or output, you know. Yeah. And look, frankly, in my job and what I do, which is, you know, my job is largely to express my opinion. That's kind of my job, in a sense, to try and move the culture in a certain direction by changing conversations. Mm-hmm. So I'm on output a lot. So I have to, as you'll know by the end of this 45 minutes, but I have to stop and listen now and then. And when I do, I learn a lot.
Good. Let's fast forward just a little bit, because you know, you and I have been in contact for many, many years. I've known you about over 20 years now. And I was, you know, an advocate of Space Frontier Foundation for a long, long time, and still am. Back when in those early days when we were touting the whole idea of new space, and everyone was really excited about it. But back then, you know, we had a lot of guys with great ideas and no money. And now you fast forward another 20 years. Now here we are. I just talked about this in the last show. We got like 600 billion or something is going into the space commercial sector, as they put it. And that's huge. And it's just growing every year. And it seems to grow without regard for what's happening to everything else in the economy. And so when I get a conversation going here about this, now we're talking about our old nemesis used to be, you know, the legacy government contractors. We used to jokingly call it old space. We don't really call it that. I call them the legacy contractors, cost plus, that kind of thing. And one of those contractors in particular is Boeing. Now, they've been around since the beginning, and they've built a lot of great stuff for all the various programs and the shuttle and ISS. And now it seems like they're having more than just a bad year. They're having an existential disaster. How do you build something? How do you spend billions of dollars building something like the CST-100 and then stranding 2 astronauts on the ISS for, you know, 8 months?
Yeah. Now, first, I do want to correct something, and that is that you had mentioned that I helped coin the term new space. That was actually a group effort by a bunch of great people in the Space Frontier Foundation. And I kind of happened to be in the room, let's say. So, but the idea, and that actually does tie in, because our definition at the time of a new space company was one that was built, funded, designed, or structured to participate in the opening of the frontier.
Yeah.
Now, that's different from these legacy companies, or what we call, Eisenhower warned us about, the aerospace industrial complex. And they're largely designed to serve a constituency that doesn't really care about opening the frontier, right? They don't care. They don't have a goal other than raking in the money. And what we're seeing with Boeing, it's so sad, and made me quite angry, as you probably saw. Anybody who wants to follow me on LinkedIn, as you know, they're going to get my pre-coffee message pretty well every day. And sometimes that's not a happy call, a happy message. What we see with Boeing is an aerospace contractor that kind of lobbied their way into a program. Now, going back to Space Frontier was responsible to a large degree for enabling NASA post-shuttle, which Space Frontier helped kill. Post-shuttle, the idea was to set up a market by having several companies compete to carry astronauts to and from the station. And what happened was, they, through elimination, they got down, they had SpaceX, and then Boeing kind of muscled its way in there. And I say muscled its way in there because it's very clear. If you look at the numbers, right, Boeing was paid more than SpaceX to build Starliner than SpaceX was paid to build the Dragon. And as you and I were talking about offline earlier, Boeing is paid $90 million per astronaut to fly astronauts to the station, whereas SpaceX gets $55 million, and they're not flying smaller astronauts. It's just a system that has been warped. Now, working within that warped system, right, that is not designed to do anything but to get the money coming in the door. And, you know, they're a cost plus system. They're from the cost plus system. And very quickly, for your listeners who don't understand, like, I have a battery here, and if you're the government and you want me to build this battery under cost plus, I get to charge you whatever it takes me to design and build this battery, and I get a percentage of what that cost is. So why would I charge you $10 for this battery and keep 10% when I could charge you $1 million for the battery and keep $100,000? That's what cost plus is. That's how you get $1 million toilets.
And that's been going on since the beginning. It's been going on forever.
That's the reason we haven't been able to go to space.
Yeah, I was at a conference a couple decades ago. It's like we had an IAC in Houston. I guess 2002. I was there for that, and I talked to this guy, and he just had a display for this hardware he was selling, and it was supposed to be some special plug-in module for the shuttle science lab. And it has an electronic thing, and it has computer capability, and it was doing all this data processing. And it had about 100 pins in the back of it, in a very complicated connector thing. And I asked him, well, what's this? This thing must be expensive. You're charging $1 million a pop for this thing. What processor is it running? And he said it was a G3. The G3 was the main processor in the Macintosh desktop units at the time. You might remember the special blue and white ones. They were with the new design early then. They were just coming out. Well, I realized I could go to a third party provider. I could buy myself a G3 processor card for about $250 back then. So cost plus is insane. Where are they getting all that extra money from? Just do space harden it? I don't know. It didn't make sense to me at the time. It makes less sense now.
It's, our friend who's well known in our world, a guy named, used to be General Pete Worden, used to call that the self-licking ice cream cone.
Yes.
Right. And it's all incestuous. It's all designed. So when Boeing was put in a similar kind of contract with SpaceX, which is more of a free enterprise or enterprise-based company, I know some people are, oh my God, SpaceX is taking government money. Yes, they are, but that's not the goal of SpaceX, right? And if I can just take a second here.
Sure.
Okay. when I do my lectures, sometimes I'll show what I call the Senate launch scam, the big orange waste of money that they're building, and then I'll take a Starship and show you and talk about the fact that if you think about it, these two systems, let's say, basically are using the same principles, right? They're using the rocket equation. They're basically the same materials to a large degree, metals and propellant and this and that and the other, but they're being built for two different reasons. And this is critical. Elon Musk, whether you like him or not politically, and believe me, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he's saying lately, but he has a dream. And his dream is to put people on Mars, as many people as possible. And so everything he's got is laser focused in on making that happen. And along the way, he can get some government contracts to help him. So what the hell, right? You're going to take it. You're going to take it. Boeing doesn't have that. Boeing is a contractor. Their job is, according to their shareholders, keep the money coming in. Don't get too radical. Don't rock the boat. Make sure you have political strength and can keep that flow going, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are two different goals, right? So Elon can't succeed unless his rocket ships. By the way, I use rockets and rocket ships. Completely 100% reusable vehicles, I call rocket ships. But why? Because you don't throw ships away.
Right.
And that's the revolution that's happening, right? So he's building rocket ships so that he can safely put as many people as possible in space, i.e. onwards to Mars. Boeing is just trying to get some money. Get that money, bring it in the door, get some more money, keep the contractor happy, or at least the politicians in charge of the contractor, because you're bringing the money into their districts. It's always follow the money in that sense. But this thing that they did with the Starliner is absurd. The vehicle was not finished, and they put astronauts in it. That's almost criminal. Mm-hmm. In some cases, it would be. Go ahead.
Well, and the same problem is happening again. Now there's going to be another launch soon, and it was actually postponed because of this helium leak. Mm-hmm. These helium leaks keep coming up. I mean, what the heck is wrong with their helium system, and what are they using it for?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
but I mean, helium is a leaky thing, but you don't. I saw an article today, and I went after it in my feed on LinkedIn, where they were like, okay, so the new flight that's going to happen, that was supposed to happen tomorrow on the Falcon and Polaris mission, right, the private one, had a helium leak. And then the person in this article, I think it was Barron's or somebody magazine, they said, look, Polaris is having a helium leak too, as if they were equating what was happening with Boeing, Polaris. And I said, look, first of all, by the way, helium is leaky stuff. It's the most leaky.
Yes, it is. It's the second smallest molecule in the universe. So of course it's going to leak through stuff.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it leaks everywhere. But them trying to fix a helium leak that they have spotted on the ground on a spacecraft that has been well proven and flown many, 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 many times, and delaying to fix that is not the same. It's not even in the ballpark of a company like Boeing launching astronauts in a vehicle that they haven't completely certified or tested, and then testing it with humans in it.
Yeah, that's really irresponsible.
That's insane.
I don't know what went on in their heads, because the news you and I were watching before the launch, they said, well, it's just a helium leak, and we'll figure out how to tap that down on the fly. Mm-hmm. So if that was the only problem, maybe they could have pulled it off. But then what happened was, I read later, that about a half a dozen or so of the actual reaction control thrusters, which are vaguely important to the maneuverability of the ship, were either working intermittently or failed entirely, and it took them forever to get docked to the ISS. Mm-hmm. That's a different kettle of fish entirely.
Again, it's a not working system. Look, think of how embarrassed the Boeing people were sitting there on the pad months and months and months, Well, the Dragon keeps flying over and over again, doing success after success after success after success. It probably gets to where somebody goes, look, damn it, let's just go. And thank God they made the decision. And I know I know it's humiliating for Boeing, but the astronauts' lives are on the line. So thank God they made the decision to bring them back on a proven vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. So we can only pray that flight goes well. We don't ever want anybody to die in space. And I think Boeing just needs to get out of the space business entirely, frankly.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question about, what's the viability of legacy contractors today, not just Boeing, but that whole ecosystem, given what's going on now. And even New Space is having a problem. I guess Mr. Bezos had a little problem on the pad the other day as well.
Sure.
And so it just shows that, space is still hard.
Yeah, but we can't put those two together. We have to be very careful about that.
Absolutely.
Now, I have a little problem with my friend Bezos, or Jeff, a little bit on his thing. Because you know me, I love to win friends and influence people. And that is that my problem there is that we have another case where Bezos is about to fly the New Glenn, which has never flown. And they've put a very expensive NASA payload on it. You will remember that when Elon first flew the Falcon, he put one of his cars on it.
Yeah.
Right?
The Falcon.
Just in case it blew up, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if it did fly, it was great PR.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bugged that NASA is putting this very expensive system, this exploration system, Mars system, on a vehicle that's never been proven. That really bothers me. I actually wrote a letter to Jeff and said, Jeff, you shouldn't do that. He obviously, didn't pay attention, whatever. But I think that we have to test systems before you put expensive payloads or people on them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We want a market. We want a market. We want multiple competing entities flying, but we don't want to lower the standard to the low end of capability. You raise the standard to the high end of capability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also got me about that is that in that last round of specific funding they got for development from NASA at the time, a few years back, Boeing got most of the money. They got like 4.2 billion, and Elon got 2.6. But look where he went with that. Like he used that money a whole lot better, obviously, than Boeing did.
And Boeing's still trying to write off a loss, which makes I just really would like to see their books. I just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. We could go all night about that one. So
I know. Well, yeah, we should talk a little bit about your latest ventures. You have, you were a co-founder of the Space Volunteer Foundation. That goes way, way back. But right now, I'd like to hear more about both the New Worlds and Earthlight Foundation.
Yeah. So what happened? And what happened? By the way, I had Space Fund. We did our last round, $20 million raise, 21 companies under management, all surviving, which is unheard of for venture capital. That's why they do what they call spray and pray. So I'm very proud of that. Don't have any unicorns, but all of our horses are alive. Let's put it that way, right? So I'm really happy about that. Handed that off in January to a new management team led by a guy named Dan Schatzman. They're out to raise $100 million fund now. Very happy about that. I'm putting my time now into Earthlight and the New Worlds Conference that we have November 1 and 2 at Space Center Houston. Oh, they're a little graphic. How cool. Man, you guys are fancy here. But yeah, we're excited about it. We've done it in Austin for many years. But this year we wanted to go uptown. So we're in the 500-seat IMAX theater. New Worlds is a Renaissance conference. We're going to talk about China and the U.S. moon race. We've got Dr. Moser, former chief scientist of Space Force. Namrata Goswami, one of the world's top China experts. We're going to talk about that. But we're also going to we're going to have a session on the creature comforts of space with our old buddy Sam Caniglio, who invented the zero gravity martini glass.
Yes, he did. He just published a book recently too, and
I wrote the foreword.
You sold, yeah, you did. I read the book. It was he sold it at ISDC, so I got a signed copy.
He's a great guy, but that's our, when you walk into a New Worlds conference, you're getting something different because there's somebody sitting on stage playing an electric sitar, right? And we're trying to blend. When I came up with New Worlds, it was basically, what kind of conference would I want to go hang out at? Because as you and I, man, we've been to every conference that's ever had the word space in it. Yeah. And so we consider it like you're gathering around the campfire. We don't have panels. We have conversations and discussions. We have little 15-minute star talks that are like TED Talks where people come in and just blow out a new idea, mic drop, walk away kind of thing. Then we have the Space Cowboy Ball, which is
that's
the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
And it's a costume party charity event that asks the question, what would you wear to a party on Mars in 100 years? And we get some really good answers to that. Luckily, not too many guys like you and me trying to pull off a Captain Kirk, spandex Star Trek.
Right.
We kind of stopped them at the door, like, sir, really, you probably want to go back home with that. You might want to beam out on that one. No, I'm kidding. That was me, actually. And, so I went home and changed. But it's a lot of fun. We give out the Space Cowboy Award. We've had Jeff Bezos showed up one year. We've given it to Glenn Shotwell, who runs SpaceX. I can't tell you who's going to win this year, but we may have 2 winners, and it's going to be really, really a great time. So go to the website, newworlds.org, and register for that, and come see us. It's going to be really, really cool this year. And we have a dance party afterwards. So a lot of fun. And space. Right, the magic of space. It's a good time. Oh, and we have a lot of we have a lot of new companies playing through. We're going to have updates for the space station companies, what they call the CLDs, commercial LEO destinations. Yeah. We're going to have Intuitive Machines stop by, the guys who landed on the moon recently, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there are some incredible people. I remember you never know what's going to happen. It's very spontaneous there. Last year I was there and we did an event, and we did a pitch event actually back then. And interestingly, we had a sponsored prize and everything. Interestingly, after the event was over, after the presentations were done, some guy walks up to me and says, he'd like to host a $1,000 prize for, voted on by the audience for the most interesting presentation that day. And within an hour, we made that happen. And we got audience participation, and they voted for a company. I thought, well, I never thought they were going to get that. But it was, but that turned out to be kind of the vision for the Space Micro Grant thing that we're doing now more formally. And that guy, that was, I think people know him as the everyday astronaut.
Yep. Yeah, Tim Dodd.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're hoping Tim shows up. We got a little something to give him maybe this year, but maybe I'm leaking, and maybe you didn't hear that.
Okay.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Right.
But
are you ready, folk? Don't listen to that part, folk.
No, it's just let it go. The thing is, and by the way, the work you guys do is great. I mean, what you're doing is so important. We have to have a vibrant startup community. That's critical. I call one of the rules we had for Space Fund was that they were frontier enabling technologies. These are technologies that are support or will profit by the opening of the frontier that's happening. I like to point out, Tom, that 1,000 years from now, people are going to look back in this 5-year period that we're in right in the middle of, and they're going to say that's when it happened. Yeah. Starship, Blue Origin, Firefly, Rocket Lab, on and on.
It's going to go on and on. It's going to keep going on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure happy to be a part of this and be able to help make these things happen myself. And so this is a new venture for me. I'm still getting my sea legs on the podcasting end of things. So we're still a little rough around the edges, but we're gonna, as our guests keep coming in, and it's gonna be.
I mean, look, I mean, you're doing a good job. I've been running. I have my Space Revolution.
Yeah.
Podcast or radio pod, I call it, because it appears on radio first, because we're part of the iHeart network, and then it becomes a podcast. But I'll tell you, it takes a little while. You'll get more comfortable. You have more fun with it. I realized when I quit, when I was trying to, you're doing coaching live. Yeah. We're doing it live. But when I quit trying so hard, I just kind of had a conversation with people rather than interviewing them and just talk to them. I found that we had a lot more fun. But you're doing great. And look, the thing is, we need more voices out there. We need to talk to anybody who will listen, because our cause is so misunderstood.
It is.
People do not get what we're for or what we're about.
And so, and all I'm doing here, and what a lot of other people we know are doing in their spaces, I like to think of it as we're adding our light to the sum of light in the universe.
I like that. See, for me, I feel like I'm shouting into the ocean sometimes, but I like yours better.
Steve Jobs also said, I want to put a ding in the universe. That was his way of looking at it.
But we have, the thing that people don't understand is, yes, we have to balance you have to have a business plan. Yes, you have to close your business plan. You have to do all the things that go into space business. But inside, we are working towards a cause. Yep. And that's what's different about this. And that's what doesn't get out there. Yeah. I wrote emails. I wrote a couple of articles before Jeff, for example, started flying people in West Texas on Blue Origin. And I was pointing out that, they're going to come for, especially the billionaires. They're going to come for you, because they're going to look at you. You've got this target now. And they did, and they have, right? But they don't understand what it is we're all trying to do, whether it is a young group of kids coming out of college who are trying to start a new company, or it's a billionaire taking their profits and investing them and opening the frontier. We're doing something that humanity desperately needs, and that is we're creating hope. Yeah. And I want to take this all the way around to one of your original things you said, that this market, this industry, doesn't seem to be tied to the regular economic ebb and flow that we see in the financial markets. It seems to be growing and growing and growing. And there's reasons for that. But one of them is that we represent hope. We are a hopeful investment. Mm-hmm. Right. There are two major areas of investment that the planet needs right now more than any other. Those that deal with saving us from the climate disaster, and those that open the frontier. And that's very, very important. And both of those kind of tie together in a way, right? They're both about creating a better future. So when I talk to people about investing, and there's a million things you can invest in, but being a part of the future, that's cool, and being able to say, I got in and I worked on this. I worked with this space company before they made it big, and look at what they're doing, and listening to folks like yourself, listening to groups like your organization, that's critical for people to do. And we just need to keep getting out there.
Exactly. I've been doing the same thing when I do the stuff that we do, when we do the Space Investment Summit, or we do the VPC, for example. I just feel privileged. I get to work with some very, very interesting folks who are building some very incredible things from scratch. And, and a few of them do break out and do really well. There's this company called Spire. You may have heard of them. Mm-hmm. They took part in our business plan competition in 2012 when we were still in the Valley. and that was under the NASA grant days, the glory days of when we were getting grants from Pete Warden at Ames, and they were called Nano Satisfy then, and they got in and they went through the program and they did their pitch. They didn't win, but someone that was participating, in the audience, and actually one guy was actually a judge for the competition. They really liked those guys, and we arranged a introduction. And I know that fellow, I'm not going to mention his name, but he helped them get their first $1 million plus going forward. And the rest is history. They just kept going on and on and on. That's one company. That was 10, 12 years ago. More recently, we did, during the COVID period, we did 3 what we call virtual business plan competitions. And somebody actually paid us to do that. But but one of the winners there was a company from Australia called Esper Space Imagery. Okay. It's called. And in the last year or two, they've gone great guns as well. They've gotten like 20 to 30 million in investment. They're getting contracts. They're going to be launching something really soon, if they haven't already. And I'm just thrilled I get a chance to work with these people a little bit before they go on to do even bigger and better things. And that's what gets me up in the morning and, makes me want to do this some more. Now, I'm really serious when I say we're building a future space economy, one successful startup at a time. It's like, bricks in the wall that you're building for the foundation, going up. And so
I would say rungs in the ladder. You're putting rungs in the ladder.
Yep, that's true.
Okay. And I think, look, I agree with you. And look, it's, you talked about, I laughed when I heard you talk about NASA giving a seminar on macroeconomics. And I just thought that was hilarious.
I was really trying to hold it in when I first mentioned that. I was stuttering, and everything. It's really
a little bit of an oxymoron, depending on who they've got in the room, right?
Yeah, I know.
They've got some good people over there. There's a guy named McDonald who's with NASA. I don't know if he's still there.
Alex. He's been great. He was running the portal for a while during the big grant time.
So he's a good man, knows what he's talking about.
Right.
But it's the one thing we have, and this is kind of the way we do with Earthlight and New Worlds, is we have this grand vision of humanity and life expanding beyond the Earth.
Yep.
But we have our feet on the ground, and we are solid. And in fact, we're having a session at New Worlds called Reality Check.
Good.
And we're going to beat the crap out of all the myths that we have. This idea that you're going to be living in little domes on the surface of the moon or Mars. No, you're going to be living under Mars.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. You're not going to be cruising around the solar system, sitting in the front windows of a starship, getting bathed in radiation. You're going to be huddled down inside, surrounded by all kinds of materials that'll keep that radiation off of you.
And that's just it. We won't be seeing, and still to this day, they build these fantastic digital imageries of domes and of all this stuff and tubes. It says, no, you're not going to see any of that from orbit. All you're going to see is little lumps in a field of sand, basically, because you've got a meter or more of regolith piled on top of you to keep the radiation out. No one's going to see shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like 4 meters that you have to have. Now, I talk about this a little bit in the book I have coming out, but we're going to do all kinds of things to modify who we are as we head out. So, for example, and there's so much to talk about, but I mean, genetic modification to where there are bacteria that live in nuclear plants because they can repair the damage so quickly. And we're going to do some of that with ourselves, and we're going to create new species of human beings as we go out and all of that. But we have to be careful with the Kool-Aid that we drink. So, for example, we're bringing a lady in who co-wrote a book called City on Mars. And it's a very skeptical book. I mean, we're gonna have some interesting moments during that session, but that's what we want to do. We have to make sure that what we're speaking about is based on reality as we open the frontier.
Absolutely. And I'll raise my hand if there's anything I can do to help contribute to that. Let me know.
Well, I mean, you already are.
Yeah.
You already are. And, moving forward, we're going to be doing a lot of different things in terms of getting the word out. I will, plug my book. There it is. Oh my goodness, there it is.
I know.
Um,
I didn't even have to ask you about it. There it is. Let's go.
There it is. I was just thinking, and I looked away, and there it is. Wow, you guys are
We're good here. We are good here.
Your engineering team is amazing. So, the book is called Why Space: The Purpose of People. The answer to the book, you don't even have to read the book. The answer is in the title. Why Space? It's the purpose of people. That's what we're all about. This is almost like an Earthlight handbook. Earthlight has 3 principles. We call them the principles of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal with this book is almost to get our community to buy into it. And maybe if we take these ideas and begin to use them as the why of what we're doing. So Tom, like you, for years, I've gone around trying to sort of sell space to people. Mm-hmm. Right. And, oh man, we're going to do this. And we're going to, our friends will be like space solar power. And we're going to harvest this. And we're going to do that. And we're going to do all these things. And we're going to be able to fly people up there and they'll get the overview effects and look down and all of these great things. We'll be able to create new materials in space. We're all, you and I deal with companies like this all the time. Right. And I realized, several years ago, it's taken a while for me to get around to writing this, but I just buried my mother that day. That evening, I'm out in the middle of a pasture and I'm walking around and my shell was cracked open, which is what happens in those moments. And I was able to receive, and I stood there in this pasture and I just felt the earth. I felt the love of the earth. I felt the love of the universe. And I felt it calling. And I realized, this is after 30 years of pushing why we go. I realized that what I've been trying to sell people, I live in Texas, and you can imagine some teenage kid in Texas telling his mom and dad that they have to have a pickup truck, and the pickup truck is going to be so useful. You're going to be able to help dad. You're going to be able to help mom carry groceries. You're going to be able to carry the dogs in the back. You're going to be able to do all kinds of things, right, with this pickup truck. Really, they just want a pickup truck. They need a pickup truck because it's their independence. It's going to help them move out of their home and become who they're going to be. That's what I realized about space, was that we have a higher calling. And we have to go through the spreadsheets and the Excels and the business plans and the business plan competitions and get funding and get our investors and do all of these things. We have to do all of that. But what we're really doing is manifesting what it means to be a human being. And so real quick, I'll give you the 3 principles. The first principle is to protect and expand the domain of life. We have to take care of the mother world and repair the damage we've done. But then if you're an Earthlighter, if you follow our philosophy, you go the next step. We carry the seeds of life to places dead. In other words, part of humanity's mission is to expand life to places in the universe where there is no life. I want to see butterflies on the moon. Yep. I want to see trees on Mars. Mm-hmm. The second one is to honor and evolve human civilization. I honor you. We're all part of the same family. We are literally on a spaceship together. We are the crew. And how you got here, what your history is, whether you came to the continent that you and I are on with Columbus, or you came in the belly of a slave ship, we all came here together. We all have a story. That story comes together now in this moment in history like it never has before. Because we are able to understand for the first time all these different histories weaving together. So when I see Me Too or I see Black Lives Matter, these are all stories coming together to explain us in angles that have never been shared. Now I can see a 3D version of what my history is. Wonderful. We're able to look out into the universe for the first time using the Hubble and using the James Webb and see where we're going. We have science fiction writers giving us stories so we can choose. Oh, I'm reading Mad Max. That's not exactly, they dress really good. It's really cool, but I would think I would go with Star Trek,
I wish that more really good sci-fi would actually hit the movie theater. I've got, you can't see around me, but I've got hundreds and hundreds of books and different sci-fi novels from great, great, great authors,
Mhm.
including Heinlein, Larry Niven, a lot of great people. And I could, some of the stuff that comes out of Hollywood right now, I could go to my bookshelf, close my eyes, pick a book at random out of that stack, and that would probably make a better and more interesting and more fun major motion picture than the stuff they're putting out now.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. I showed my 10-year-old daughter, tried to have her watch Dune, and she was like, "Oh, they already did this in Star Wars, except Star Wars was funnier."
Oh, no.
Okay, well, that's where he got it. That's where it came from. But anyway, moving along. So the last principle.
Yeah.
So there's honor and evolve. So as we evolve, we learn to work together. And, there's one place in the solar system where Russians and Americans are hanging out and having a good time and actually love each other. It's called the space station.
Yep.
Right. So we have these things we can explain to humanity as to the benefit. And by the way, it was space where we saw the Earth from the first time. We realized we're on this little spaceship together. But as we go out and we get into these new spaceships, they're going to teach it. There is no greater environmentalist than a woman floating in a space station, looking down at the Earth, rebreathing her own air, re-drinking her own recycled urine, and eating food that was grown out of the waste that they created in that. That person understands the environment. So we have models that we can use to teach the next generation, which is why we'll come back to it maybe, but one of the reasons I'm against deorbiting the space station. Whole different story. Then the third one is explore and experience the universe. That's the fun one.
Yeah.
And that's the mandate. You have to get up off of the planetary couch, put down the planetary remote, lay down your planetary iPhone, and get out and experience the universe.
Yeah.
Now, if you take those three, put them together, and use that as a philosophy for humanity, I think you're talking about a fun place to live and a good group of people to live with as we go out.
Absolutely. Now, but that also sounds to me like a philosophical template for our human civilization on this earth to break through the Fermi paradox.
Yeah.
Enrico Fermi talked about this in the 1950s. He was going, okay, our equations seem to tell us so many types of stars out there. So many of these should have planets. Some of them should be supporting life. So where is everybody? And they had a big meeting about this, a big conference. Einstein, everybody showed up. And they pretty much came to the conclusion that over some period in that planet's civilizational evolution, they have a test. They have a test if they can get it together enough to finally put their differences away, realize what you just told everybody, and actually get off their planet and go somewhere and evolve to the next level. And the theory is most of them don't make it.
They don't.
Potentially. And so when we're going out and exploring that universe, it's going to be interesting, but also a little bit sad at the same time. Sooner or later, we're going to run across the wreckage of dozens, maybe who knows, hundreds of worlds that just didn't quite make it.
Yeah,
and we hopefully through the study of that we will learn even more, from their failures and make our successes better. But we still have a shot. We still have a shot,
and
a big shot.
This moment in time, we're at the end of the most important 100 years in human history.
Absolutely.
If you start in like the 1920s, 30s, let's say, and you go to today, what did we have at that point? We'd just been through a plague. We had the first world wars. We had the first interplanetary communication systems. We were able to start traveling across the world to see each other using technology. And around that rough period of time, we developed the atomic bomb and the rockets that enable us to carry it and wipe out the planet. All right. We're coming to that moment now, 100 years later, where all of that stuff is matured. We're starting to see the mistakes we've made. And lo and behold, we have a generation that rises up inspired by the Apollo program and the cosmonauts back in the day. And they're rising up and they're building rocket ships that will transform the swords of the ICBMs and the other weapons of destruction into the plowshares that will allow us to open the universe. And I also have a little essay on this in my book, is what if we're alone? What if we're it? It's a thought experiment. We rebel against that.
Yeah.
We have people that have been beamed up and probed. I mean, they swear to God. God bless them, but we've created aliens ever since we started. We used to call them angels and demons and, whatever. And now they happen to come down and like ET and they touch us with a glowing finger and, we want it too bad. But we want it because we're lonely. And we're lonely because we're trying to figure out who we are and why we are.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we're doing what we're doing in the very mundane world that we have, bring it all the way back down to spreadsheets and balancing a business plan and finding investors and bringing them in and showing them that we can deliver a product that solves a need, and then solving that need, creating that product, and doing it underneath by knowing we have a passion for what it is we're doing, because we're part of the most magnificent enterprise in the history of humanity. And that is the opening of space, the saving of the mother world, and the expansion of life into places now dead. You and I are part of that. You and I, our job, and you do it really well, and CSCF does a great job of that, is help these people along, keep them practical, keep them practical, keep them working on that bottom line, keep them rolling out what they need to do to succeed in their businesses. Because then we all work together and we create that ladder. We create that way of accessing the frontier. And then we throw that airlock open for everybody to go.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Exactly. I always thought that when you talk about those things and getting resources and everybody's talking about what's going to be the bottom line from getting space resources or bringing it back to Earth. Well, that's the other thing. That's the other myth that I'd like to confront. So I think 98% of what's ultimately resourced out in space is going to stay out in space for the benefit of the people who live out in space and want to build the next wave of human civilization. They're going to be using carbonaceous chondrite asteroids to build habitats and to build all sorts of things. And maybe if they find a vein of platinum in there, they can trade for a little hard currency once in a while. They might ship that back to the home world, but otherwise, it's going to be not only the raw materials, but also the new technologies they may develop along the way that they can also trade for hard currency.
Yeah, there's plenty of materials here on Earth. The question is, where do you want to get it? Right? I mean, do you want to rip the heart out of a living mountain on this planet, or maybe mine an asteroid impact zone on the far side of the moon, or an asteroid that's still out there and get it there? We have those options, and that's what this is all about. Options.
Okay. Well, Rick, I guess my producer is waving frantically at me. We're actually hit our time zone very, very easily. We could have done this for another hour at least.
Oh, yeah, you and I could go forever.
I would have loved it. Maybe someday we'll do this again soon, I hope. We'll do this. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
No, I just think that we're part of something big. If you're an investor out there, invest in space, but do so smartly. By the way, when you're in space, the rules of business still apply. Good. Right? They still apply.
They still apply.
And there's no magic in that part. Laws of physics are also kind of important as well. But in the meantime, we go up, we go out, we do it together, and we make a profit for everybody, and that includes saving the Earth.
Rick Tomlinson, renegade, rebel, respected leader. It's been great to have you.
A check for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care.